I came to Canada when I was 17 years old. I came from Hyderabad, India, and I moved directly to Windsor, Ontario. And that was a very big difference. I went from being a very high status group member to a very invisible individual. Fortunately, the campus I went to was relatively smaller. So I was able to meet people and interact with them and sort of develop my interest in psychology in Windsor. One way I found of feeling included was my professors. I made in contacts with my professor in Russian. That's the professor on the top. And then my psychology professor in the bottom. Both those professors helped me a lot in learning how to navigate university environment, learning how to develop my career goals, and learning what I needed to do to get where I am. That's, I think, one of the main things that helped me. I try to do that for students who come here, but I also want to encourage students who are in different campuses to be a bit more proactive and to make friends with your professors and to not only just go to them when you need help, but also just to chat with them, to make it informal connections. And networking is really important for the help that you may get to develop your career. So helping clubs is now what I'm doing. I also encourage my students when they join my class to come and talk to me about their future careers because that's what I experience. So in U of T, we have 3 campuses. They're spread out so far away, and often it feels like there are a number. But making individual connections and trying to build a network here was really helpful for me, and that's what I want to encourage you as students to do. I also think that campuses can become more inclusive by creating an environment for students to feel welcome. So that's something I do research on. So I research how campuses can encourage people to become more engaged and how that helps improve their self-esteem. So one way I not only do to study climate, but I also involve students in my own research. And so if students want to go into their PhDs or masters, one of the things I try to do, because this is what my professors did for me, I try to involve my students in my research. Yeah, so this is a tough question. Often when you're an international student and you come to North America, I think now because of the internet, there's a lot more information available as to what will be the challenges and how you overcome it. And you can read a lot about it from different people. When I came, it was like 1991. We just had like bare minimum internet. So there was a lot of unknown factors. My language skills were constantly being challenged. My accent was constantly derogated. So those are the things that a lot of international students do face. You may know English better than people who were born here in Canada, or you may know more words, but people just may not realize that you do know that because you have an accent. And I noticed that that held me back because when I went to graduate school, a lot of people said, "Oh, we didn't know you can speak English so well. We didn't know how to say your name, so we thought you can't speak English," which doesn't make sense. But that's how people connect things. So when I heard that these are the stereotypes against international students or against students coming from different cultural backgrounds, I tried to take a more proactive approach. So when people wrote letters of reference for me, I asked them to comment or write about my skill in English and my skill in writing and my skill in presenting, because communication skills seem to be the one that people had stereotypes against. So in my own small way, I try to learn about stereotypes against me and I try to address them in small ways. But I'm going to say that now as a professor, I realize that those are the challenges that students face. And I advocate for students when we talk about students in meetings and when we talk about language and communication skills in meetings among faculty. So another thing that I'm fortunate enough to do is because I came from a different culture, I was also interested in doing research about cultural differences and to see how people from different cultures adapt within a certain cultural environment. So I was lucky enough to not only experience cross-cultural changes, but also to be able to study that. And so that kind of motivated some of my research. One of the things that this question prompted in me is the idea is that when you're in the culture, you don't really realize what is going on. Often it takes for you to step out of it to see what the negative effect of culture can be, of what the negative effect of societal forces can be. And so often you may not even realize some of the privileges that we had when we were in a culture, and then we come out of it. And then, so thinking about how my birth country shaped some of the perceptions that people have of different groups and different cultural groups, different gender groups, really helped me to realize what was right and what was wrong, and what was part of the narrative that you read when you're in the culture, and that you get a different narrative when you come out of the culture. So I learned a lot about India actually when I was in Illinois, because at the time when I was growing up, the media was very constrained. We only had certain lessons in history about certain groups. We didn't learn about the negative things that were happening in our country because our history books were very closely monitored. So that's something I realized when we come out. So I think that coming to an international environment can help you realize some of your privileges that you had in a different country and that you now have, that you don't have now in a different country. So my most recent book chapter is actually about the role of history and media in how that affects people's perceptions and how that shapes their leadership skills and what they do when they become CEOs and what they do when they become leaders in companies. We have to really start to acknowledge or learn about our own history, the history of the culture we were born in, and the history of the culture we're in or living in, and how media affects those perceptions as well. So history and media are very tightly connected. And that's why now you're seeing in all the Black Lives Movement resources, a lot of resources are about the role of history and the role of media. And you realize that only after an event like this happens and it shakes your understanding of what is going on. So thinking about reading about history and thinking about media in a critical way is something that happened to me after I came out of India. So in addition to helping students, I also try to provide news media itself some knowledge or some insight about whether certain things are working or not. And right now, Starbucks is again in the news. So they had closed down their stores for a day a couple of years ago to engage in bias training. And the whole world watched while they shut it down. And they wondered, does that really work or not? So this is where I feel like my research helps to contribute into the discussion of whether this is the right step. And in my TV interview, I said, training is just a small part. Recruitment, selection, hiring, promotion, pay are all those topics that I talked about earlier are those that actually show whether Starbucks is making a difference or not. You may also know recently they were again in the news because they told their employees not to wear what they would want to wear. And then because of the social media outcry, they then reverse their position. So a lot of people are now watching companies take initiatives towards equity and step back and go forward and step back. And it's great that people are giving their feedback and keeping them accountable. I think this is an amazing time to be involved in work like this because you can make a difference. Here's a picture of me and my graduate school friends. We traveled to Spain to present our research. And of course, there also, because we are different, we had experienced a lot of different treatment. But some of the ways in which I advocate for change is not only to help my students, I also presented to the Canadian Senate what the research on harassment says and what they should be doing to improve or decrease workplace harassment. So I definitely changed my focus from being more an internal researcher to using that to improve workplaces. So here's some other articles that I wrote about how corporations should address gender disparities. So I was lucky enough to pick a topic that I wanted to research, and I can use that research for advocating for change and for helping students to improve their educational opportunities. And I hope that that's something that you can aspire to do soon. Thank you.